Happy Hump Day and welcome back for an all-new episode of the Midweek Mini. As you know, we've been doing a weekly series on the Black Widow murders, and the one we're talking about today exterminated not one, but 4 of her husbands. So let's go ahead and get this episode started.
Studios proudly presents Midweek Minis, and here's your host, Andrea Lee.
Alright, now I do have to say that there's not a whole lot that is known about today's Black Widow's early years, but she was born as Mary Elizabeth Cassidy on June the 11th, sorry, I cannot talk today, but anyway, she was born on June the 11th, 1889, in Hebburn, South Tyneside. When she was around 19 years old, she married her first husband, and his name was John Knowles. And these two, they settled in a house in windy Nook, Gateshead. Now, our Mary in this story was not a prim and proper lady at all for those times. She had a lover. And at some point, after she and John Knowles married, her lover, John Russell, moved in with Mary and John Knowles. But, I don't know the situation there, but, yeah. Well, in 1955, John Knowles passed away. 5 months later, Mary married John Russell. Well, poor Mary became a widow for the second time in either late 1956 or early 1957. Now, in both of those cases, doctors declared that Mary's husbands had died of natural causes and Mary inherited their money. Well, in June of 1957, Mary married, that's a hard little phrase to say, but Mary married her third husband. And he was a retired real estate agent named Oliver Leonard. Only 12 days after they said I do, Oliver dropped dead. Mary, for the third time, was a widow, and she inherited this guy's money also. She wasn't really inheriting that much from any of these husbands, though. From those first 3 husbands, she inherited like 92 pounds. And that would equal to like 2,300 pounds these days, or like 31,000 US dollars at today's rate. I mean, it's a good chunk of change, but I mean, still, it just doesn't seem like worth what she was doing. But anyway, so she, like I said, she just really wasn't inheriting this huge fortune. Soon she met and married her 4th husband, and his name was Ernest Wilson. Now, Ernest had a little more to leave Mary. When he died, which was in the first year of their marriage, he had 100 pounds, a bungalow, and a life insurance policy. But get this, Mary didn't even attend his funeral. I mean, you would think she could at least be gracious enough to at least pay her last respects to the man that left his fortune to her. So, anyway, but as you can imagine, people started talking. Mary was like the main subject of the local gossips there in their town. They were talking about how quick those husbands were dropping and how lighthearted she seemed to be after each of her husband's passings. And she even joked at her wedding reception when she married Ernest that the leftover finger sandwiches and other food could be saved for his funeral. Now, I joke, but I mean, I'm not killing husbands. But anyway, she even asked the local funeral director or the undertaker there for a discount. I mean, she was giving him a lot of business, but who asked somebody like that for a discount? I mean, seriously. Well, it wasn't long before her dark humor soon got the attention of local authorities. So they decided to exhume the bodies of the last 2 husbands. And they did this, autopsy type thing. And they found that both of these husbands had an unusually high levels of phosphorus in their system. Well, phosphorus is used in beetle poisoning. So she basically exterminated her husbands. But now Mary, she had an explanation for it, and she said that large amount of phosphorus was coming from their medications. But that's just not even true. Well, she was arrested. She went on trial in 1958. A jury found her guilty, and she was the last woman in that country to be sentenced to death. But because of her age, her sentence was commuted from the death penalty to life in prison. But only 4 years after she went into prison, she died at the age of like 73. Now, they did exhume the bodies of the first two husbands as well and found out that she had killed them too. But I mean, she's had been given life and she was already old, so I mean, there's really not much more they could do to her. So anyway, now I think probably if she hadn't been cracking jokes, she might would have gotten away with all of those murders. I mean, yeah, she had a dark sense of humor, and I believe that was her downfall. But then you have 4 husbands in a row that die so quickly after you marry them, and I still think people would talk regardless of the fact that she was telling all these crazy jokes and whatnot. I mean, it can't be just a coincidence. Well, that's all I've got for today's Black Widow. Like I said, it was short and sweet. But join me again next week for our next Black Widow. And don't forget to come back on Friday evening for our What the Friday. Y'all have a good week.